Have you ever found yourself, really wanting something?
Oh, definitely.
Maybe it's that perfect cup of coffee first thing Monday morning, or the latest phone everyone's talking about.
Yeah.
You can almost taste the coffee or feel that new gadget in your hand, but then you get it, and after a while, maybe the 10th coffee or a few weeks with the phone, that initial intense desire, it starts to fade, right?
Yeah, it really does.
What drives that initial feeling, and how do we figure out when, enough is enough?
Well, that exact experience you just described, that's something pretty much everyone goes through, and it's precisely what we're going to dive deep into today.
Okay.
We're talking about utility analysis. It's a really fundamental concept in economics.
Right.
You can think of it as kind of the blueprint for understanding why we make the consumer choices we do.
Yeah.
How we try to get the most satisfaction, the most bang for our buck, essentially, with limited resources.
And this deep dive is basically your shortcut to getting these core ideas without getting too bogged down in heavy jargon. We're pulling our insights from a pretty comprehensive chapter on utility analysis, and our mission today is to unpack the building blocks of consumer choice. So everything from the basic nature of human desires to, the surprising ways our satisfaction levels influence demand.
Sounds good.
So let's start right at the beginning. What exactly is a want in economic terms?
Okay, so at its absolute simplest, a want is just a feeling of dissatisfaction, a lack of something.
That itch you need to scratch.
Precisely. It's that urge, that need for something to make you feel, complete or satisfied. But the really interesting thing about wants is their nature.
Okay.
They are, first off, unlimited. You satisfy one want and almost straight away another one just pops up.
Oh, absolutely. It's like the minute you buy a new phone, you start thinking about the case, the apps, the next upgrade.
Exactly. And they're also incredibly diverse and they recur. My wants right now are totally different from a teenager's or what I'd want in deep winter versus high summer.
Or even just based on habits or culture. Right. And you satisfy your hunger, but guess what? It always comes back. They keep recurring.
True. So wants are unlimited, diverse, recurring. Where did utility fit into this?
Okay, so if a want is that feeling of lack, then utility is the capacity, the power a good or service has to satisfy that want.
Okay.
It's basically the want-satisfying power of a good. It's why you choose to spend your limited money on this thing rather than that thing. You're trying to maximize your utility, get the most satisfaction you can, given what you have.
So if you're listening now, maybe take a second. What items satisfy your wants most powerfully right now? Or think about it this way. A piece of chalk might not have much utility for me day to day.
Right.
But for a teacher,
Yeah.
they have huge utility because it helps them satisfy their want to teach, to communicate ideas. It's all about context, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And when we talk about utility, it's not some simple fixed idea. It has some really fascinating features or dimensions.
Like what?
For one, utility is inherently relative. Its value, its intensity changes with time and place.
Woolen clothes, for instance. Massive utility in winter. Almost zero on a tropical beach in July.
Makes sense.
Or sand. Huge utility at a construction site, but pretty low utility just sitting there on the seashore, relatively speaking.
Okay, so relative to time and place, what else?
It's also deeply subjective. This is key. It's a psychological concept.
Yeah.
What gives me utility might do absolutely nothing for you.
Yeah.
It's all down to our individual tastes, preferences, likes, dislikes, habits, even our jobs.
Right. Like you mentioned the stethoscope earlier. Massive utility for a doctor, but for me, it's just a weird necklace, basically.
Exactly. And here's a point that often surprises people. Utility is ethically neutral.
Ethically neutral. What does that mean?
It means utility has no moral consideration attached to it. It's morally colorless. A commodity has utility if it satisfies a want, period, regardless of whether we think the want or the thing satisfying it is good or bad.
Wow. Okay, that's a powerful idea. So economics, by defining utility this way, it kind of steps back from judging the why behind the want.
Precisely. It's focusing purely on the mechanics of desire and satisfaction. It tells us that from a purely economic viewpoint, a good is useful, it has utility, if it satisfies someone's want.
So the example often used is a knife, right?
Exactly. A knife has utility for chopping vegetables for dinner. Great. But it also has utility if someone, unfortunately, uses it to harm someone. Economics, in this strict sense, just observe the satisfaction of the want, the need to cut, or the desire to harm, not the moral weight of it.
It doesn't endorse the use. It just describes the function in relation to a want.
You got it.
Okay, so building on that, utility also differs from usefulness then. They sound similar.
They do, but there's a distinction. Usefulness implies value and use, often suggesting something beneficial or wholesome. Utility is simply want-satisfying power.
Okay, give me an example.
Milk. It has both utility, it satisfies thirst or hunger, and usefulness, it provides nutrition.
Yeah.
But think about, say, liquor for someone struggling with addiction. According to this definition, it has utility for the addict because it satisfies their intense want or craving. But you wouldn't say it has general usefulness for their well-being.
It's a fine line, but important. Want satisfying versus generally beneficial.
Exactly. And it also differs from pleasure. A commodity can have utility without giving you any pleasure at all.
Like medicine.
Perfect example, an injection. Nobody enjoys getting one, right? It can be unpleasant, even painful.
Definitely.
But it has immense utility if it cures an illness or prevents one. It satisfies the want for health, even though the experience itself isn't pleasurable.
That makes total sense. And, okay, another distinction. Utility versus satisfaction. Aren't they the same thing?
Often used interchangeably in everyday language, but in economics, they're distinct. Utility is the anticipated satisfaction, the cause of consumption. Satisfaction is the actual feeling you get afterwards, the end result.
Ah, okay, so the potential versus the outcome.
Kind of. Think about being thirsty. Water possesses utility because it has the capacity to quench your thirst. That utility is why you drink it. The feeling of your thirst being quenched after you drink. That's the satisfaction. They're related, but one's the reason, the other's the result.
Got it. Utility is the power, satisfaction is the payoff.
Nicely put. Another crucial feature. The measurement of utility is hypothetical.
Meaning we can't actually put a number on it.
Exactly. It's an abstract psychological thing. You can't say, oh, that coffee gave me exactly 8.7 units of utility. It doesn't work like that.
So how do economists talk about it then?
We mainly think about it in terms of direction. You experience utility as positive, you feel better off. 0 makes no difference. Or negative. And negative utility, that's what we call disutility.
Disutility. So consuming something actually makes you feel worse.
Right, like that extra slice of pizza that makes you feel sick. That's disutility.
Okay. So less about precise numbers, more about a kind of internal ranking or feeling.
Precisely. And utility can also be multi-purpose. One single thing can satisfy multiple wants for lots of different people.
Like electricity.
Perfect example. Powers, lights, heating, computers, machinery, used by millions of people for countless different purposes, all at the same time.
Right. And does the intensity of the want matter?
Hugely. Utility depends on the intensity of the want. The more desperate your need, the greater the utility you'll get from satisfying it.
Like food when you're starving versus when you just ate.
Exactly. A starving person finds immense utility in a simple piece of bread, someone who's full. Much less utility from that same bread. As the urgency drops, utility diminishes.
Which leads naturally to the final point here, I guess. Utility is the basis of demand.
It has to be, right? You're only going to demand something, be willing to pay for it, if it gives you some utility.
Nobody demands things that give them zero satisfaction or make them feel worse.
Well, ideally not. A sick person demands medicine because it has the utility to make them better. That connection between utility and the willingness to acquire something is fundamental to demand.
Okay, that covers the features of utility. What about the different types? You mentioned value being created in different ways.
Right. Economists classify utility based on how that want-satisfying power comes about. First, there's form utility.
Form, like changing the shape of something.
Exactly. It's utility created by changing the physical form or structure of materials. Think about a carpenter taking raw wood and turning it into a chair or table.
Or a potter taking clay and making a pot or a toy.
Precisely. The change in form adds utility. Then there's place utility.
That sounds like location matters.
It does. Utility increases simply because of a change in location. Those woolen clothes we mentioned, moving them from a warehouse in a hot climate to a shop in a cold one creates place utility.
So transport is key here.
Transport is the classic creator of place utility, yes. Moving goods to where they are wanted or needed more.
Okay. Form, place, what's next?
Service utility. This is the utility that comes directly from personal services provided by professionals.
Like doctors, lawyers, teachers.
Exactly. Their skills, their actions, their advice that provides direct utility to the person receiving the service.
Makes sense. That feels related to the next one, perhaps. Knowledge utility.
It is related, but distinct. Knowledge utility arises when a consumer acquires knowledge about how to use a product. increasing its utility for them.
Ah, okay. Like my smartphone. When I first got it, I could make calls. Fine. But as I learned about all the apps and features...
Its utility for you increased dramatically, right?
Yeah.
The more you know about its functions, the more wants it can satisfy for you. Same for a complex piece of software or a computer.
Got it. What else?
Possession utility. This one's pretty straightforward. It rises from the simple act of transferring ownership.
So when a shop sells me something...
Yes. The transfer of goods from the seller to you, the buyer, creates utility because now you possess the item you wanted. The change in possession itself adds value for you.
Okay. And the last one?
Time utility. This is about utility increasing because of a change in the time of utilization. It often involves storing things until they're needed more, like textbooks having much more utility during exam season than during the summer holidays. Or blood banks storing blood.
Ah, yes. The blood has utility, but its utility skyrockets in an emergency, and the storage ensures it's available at that critical time.
Exactly. Storage bridges the time gap, increasing utility.
Okay, so form, place, service, knowledge, possession, and time utility. Different ways value gets created or enhanced.
Right, so maybe a quick mental quiz for you listening. If a dentist treats a patient's toothache, what kind of utility is mainly at play there?
Treating a toothache. That sounds like a professional providing their skill directly, so service utility.
Spot on. Okay, one more. A mountaineer high up on a peak uses an oxygen cylinder. What utility is crucial there?
High on a peak, oxygen. The location is critical because the air is thin, so place utility. The oxygen is way more valuable there than at sea level.
Exactly right. Again, you're getting the hang of these different types.
So now that we understand the facets and types, how do we actually think about the amount of satisfaction? You mentioned we can't measure it precisely, but economists still talk about it.
We do. We use two key concepts, total utility and marginal utility.
Okay.
Total utility, or TU, is pretty intuitive. It's the overall aggregate satisfaction you get from consuming all the units of a particular commodity.
So if I eat 3 cookies, it's the total enjoyment from all 3 combined.
Exactly. Sum total of satisfaction. Now, marginal utility, or MU, is where things get really interesting for understanding behavior.
Marginal, meaning on the edge.
Kind of. It's the additional or extra utility you get from consuming one more unit of that commodity. It's the satisfaction added by the very last unit you consumed.
So in the cookie example, if I've already eaten 2, the marginal utility is the satisfaction I get just from eating the 3rd one?
Precisely. Not the total from 3, just the boost from number 3 itself.
Whoa.
And these two concepts, TU and MU, are completely linked. Okay, imagine you're consuming units of something you like. Let's stick with cookies. That very first cookie, your total utility and your marginal utility are the same because it's the only one you've had.
Right. 1 cookie equals TU equals MU.
Now, you eat a second cookie, your total utility will almost certainly go up, right? You enjoyed the second one too.
Yeah, probably.
But the additional satisfaction you got from that second cookie, the MU of the second, is likely less than what you got from the first one.
Ah, okay. The first one was amazing because I was hungry. The second is good, but maybe not as amazing.
Exactly. So as you consume more units, your total utility generally keeps increasing, but it increases at a diminishing rate. And because TU is increasing by smaller and smaller amounts, your marginal utility is decreasing with each additional unit consumed.
Got it. Total satisfaction rises, but the extra kick from each new one gets weaker.
Precisely. And this continues until you reach a point. We call it the point of satiety, or maximum satisfaction.
Satiety. Like being full.
Exactly. At this point, your total utility has reached its peak. It stops increasing. And what do you think happens to marginal utility at that exact point?
Well, if total utility isn't increasing anymore, the last unit must have added nothing. So marginal utility is 0?
Bingo. At the point of satiety, MU becomes 0. You're perfectly satisfied. One more unit adds no extra satisfaction.
But what if you keep going? Like someone offers you another cookie even though you're full?
Now we go beyond satiety. If you consume more units after that point, your total utility actually starts to decline. You start feeling worse off.
Like feeling stuffed or even sick.
Right. And if total utility is declining, what does that mean for marginal utility?
It must be negative now. It's subtracting from my total satisfaction.
Exactly. Beyond the point of satiety, MU becomes negative. This is that disutility we talked about. Consuming more actually makes you feel worse. I remember finishing a whole pint of ice cream once. The first half was great, but the last few spoonfuls.
Yeah, definitely hit negative marginal utility there. I did that with a bag of chips once, thought more was better, but learned my lesson. It's exactly this principle in action, isn't it?
It absolutely is, and
Right.
we can visualize this really clearly with graphs. The total utility curve starts by sloping upwards, then it flattens out at the peak, satiety, and then it slopes downwards.
Okay.
The marginal utility curve, meanwhile, starts high and slopes consistently downwards, crosses the horizontal axis when MU is 0 at the same consumption level where TU peaks, and then goes below the axis into negative territory.
So the shapes of the curves directly show that relationship TU rising slower and slower while MU falls, TU peaking when MU is 0, and TU falling when MU is negative.
You've got it. And the practical implication is huge. A rational consumer, aiming to maximize their satisfaction, will stop consuming at that point of satiety.
Because pushing past it means you're deliberately choosing dissatisfaction or disutility.
Exactly. We've all felt it, haven't we? That moment when something you usually love, if you have just one more, suddenly feels less enjoyable or actively unpleasant.
Yeah, that's your brain or your stomach telling you you've hit peak TU and MU is about to go negative.
Which brings us neatly to one of the most fundamental laws in consumer theory. The law of diminishing marginal utility, often shortened to LDMU.
Okay, the big one.
It is. It was kind of floated first by a guy named Gossin, but it was really Professor Alfred Marshall who nailed it down in his famous 1890 book, Principles of Economics. And it's seen as pretty universal because it describes such a common pattern of human behavior.
And Marshall's formal statement of the law was...
And put it like this. Other things remaining constant, the additional benefit which a person derives from a given increase in his stock of a thing diminishes with every increase in the stock that he already has.
Okay, that's a bit academic, in simpler terms.
It boils down to, the more you have of something, the less you want even more of it. Each additional unit gives you less extra satisfaction than the previous one.
Seems pretty intuitive for most things, like cookies or coffee.
It does. But importantly, the law operates under certain specific assumptions or conditions. These are crucial for understanding when it applies and when it might not seem to.
Ah, the fine print. Okay, what are these assumptions?
First, rationality. The consumer is assumed to be rational, meaning they aim to maximize their satisfaction and make sensible choices.
Okay, no irrational behavior.
Second, cardinal measurement. For the sake of the law, utility is assumed to be measurable in principle, even if we know it's hard in practice. Like we can compare the utility of the first and second cookie numerically.
Bit of a theoretical leap, but okay.
Third, homogeneity. All units of the commodity being consumed are identical. Same size, shape, taste, quality, no variations.
So, identical cookies, not one chocolate chip and one oatmeal raisin.
Exactly. Fourth, continuity. The units are consumed in quick succession, with no significant time gaps between them.
So, eating the cookies one after another, not one today and one next week.
Right. Fifth, reasonability. The units consumed must be of a reasonable standard size, not microscopically small or ridiculously large.
Makes sense. Sixth, constancy. This is a big one. Related factors like the consumer's income, tastes, habits, preferences, and importantly, the marginal utility of money itself are assumed to remain constant during the period of consumption. So nothing else changes that might affect how much I enjoy the cookies.
Correct. Seventh, divisibility. The commodity can be divided into small units for consumption.
Like cookies, but maybe not like cars.
Good point. And finally, single want. The commodity is assumed to satisfy a single specific want, which itself is satiable, meaning you can eventually have enough of it.
Okay, so lots of conditions need to hold for the law to apply perfectly. Rationality, identical units, quick consumption, reasonable size, nothing else changing, divisible goods, satisfying one specific need.
Exactly. And graphically, the law of diminishing marginal utility is just represented by that downward-sloping marginal utility curve we talked about. It visually shows MU decreasing, hitting 0, and then going negative.
Now, you sometimes hear people talk about exceptions to this law, things where maybe more is better.
Right. There are classic examples people bring up. But it's really important to see them as apparent exceptions because they almost always violate one or more of those assumptions we just listed.
So they don't disprove the law, they just show situations where the conditions aren't met.
Precisely. Take hobbies, like collecting stamps, coins, or rare art. People often feel the more they get, the more pleasure it brings, the more they want the next piece.
Yeah, that feels like increasing marginal utility.
But think about the assumptions. Are all stamps identical?
Right.
Homogeneity? No. Each one is unique. Are they acquired in quick succession? Continuity? Usually not. So it violates the assumptions.
Okay, makes sense. What about something like a miser and money? Doesn't every extra dollar seem to bring them more satisfaction?
That's another classic one. But it arguably violates the rationality assumption. Is hoarding money endlessly purely for its own sake rational economic behavior aimed at satisfaction? Maybe not. Also, money itself is complicated because it satisfies many wants, not a single one.
Right. And addictions, like with alcohol, sometimes it feels like the more someone drinks, the more they crave the next one.
Again, this seems to violate rationality. The satisfaction is arguably an illusion masking harm, and the person isn't making choices to maximize their overall well-being. Plus, the physiological effects change over time.
And power. The lust for power seems insatiable for some.
Similar issue. It challenges rationality and constancy. Power isn't a standard homogeneous commodity consumed in units.
So these aren't really exceptions to the law itself, but examples where the specific conditions the law requires just don't apply.
That's generally how economists view them, yes. They highlight the boundaries of the law. However, the law does face some genuine criticisms.
Okay, what are the main criticisms?
Well, first, those unrealistic assumptions we just painstakingly listed. Critics say it's very hard for all those conditions, perfect rationality, homogeneity, continuity, constancy, to hold true in the real world simultaneously.
Life is messier than the model.
Exactly. Second, the whole cardinal measurement issue. Can we really assign numbers to psychological satisfaction? Many economists prefer ordinal utility, just ranking preferences, for this reason.
Right, the indifference curve approach you mentioned.
Yes. Third, indivisible goods. The law doesn't work well for bulky items like cars, houses, or refrigerators. You typically buy one, not successive units where you can track diminishing MU easily.
You don't buy 5 refrigerators in a row.
Hopefully not. Fourth, the constant marginal utility of money assumption is heavily debated. Critics argue the value of an extra dollar does change depending on how much money you already have or changes in prices. A dollar means more to a poor person than a rich person.
Seems plausible.
And finally, the single want assumption. In reality, we're usually juggling many wants and making choices across different goods simultaneously, not just consuming one thing in isolation until we're full.
So given all these apparent exceptions and valid criticisms, why is LDMU still considered so important? Why are we even talking about it?
Great question. Despite the critiques, it remains a cornerstone of economic thought because it's incredibly useful and explains a lot of fundamental behavior.
Okay, how is it useful?
Well, for us as consumers, it creates awareness. Understanding LDMU helps us realize that to maximize our overall satisfaction from our limited budgets, we should diversify our spending.
Don't just keep buying more and more of the same thing after its MU starts dropping. Spread the money around to satisfy other wants where the MU is still high.
Exactly. Get more total utility that way. It's also very useful for governments when designing policy. Think about progressive taxation, where higher earners pay a larger percentage of their income in taxes. The underlying principle is often linked to LDMU applied to money. The marginal utility of an extra £100 is assumed to be lower for someone earning £200,000 than for someone earning £20,000. So taxing the richer person more heavily causes less total sacrifice of utility for society. It also informs trade policies and pricing strategies.
Okay, that's interesting. What else?
It's the basis for understanding the paradox of values.
For what now?
The paradox of values asks, why are essential things like water, which have immense use value, so cheap, low exchange value, while non-essential things like diamonds, with low use value, so expensive, high exchange value?
Yeah. Water versus diamonds. Good question.
LDMU helps explain it. Water is incredibly useful, but it's relatively abundant. So we consume a lot of it, and its marginal utility quickly becomes very low. We wouldn't pay much for one more glass. Diamonds are much less useful overall, but they're scarce. The marginal utility of getting one diamond remains very high. Price is related to marginal utility, not total utility.
Wow, okay. That clarifies a lot. Scarcity keeps the MU high for diamonds. Abundance pushes MU down for water, even though its total utility is massive.
Precisely. And perhaps the most significant application of LDMU, it forms the fundamental basis of the law of demand.
Which is the bread and butter of basic economics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Price goes up, demand goes down, and vice versa.
Exactly. And LDMU explains why that inverse relationship typically holds.
How does it connect directly?
Think about it. As you consume more units of a good, its marginal utility diminishes.
Right. Each extra unit is worth less to you.
So would you be willing to pay the same price for the 5th cookie as you paid for the first, much more satisfying cookie?
Probably not. I'd only buy that 5th one if it were cheaper to match its lower marginal utility.
Exactly. Because the satisfaction you get from additional units is falling, you'll only buy those additional units if the price also falls. That downward sloping demand curve directly reflects the downward sloping marginal utility curve.
So LDMU, lower willingness to pay for extra units, downward sloping demand curve.
You've nailed the connection. To make this even clearer, economists sometimes convert MU into monetary terms. Imagine, just hypothetically, that 1 unit of MU is worth, say, £1 to you, and the market price of a cookie is 50p.
Okay.
Maybe the first cookie gives you MU equivalent to £1.50, the second gives MU of £1, the third gives MU of 75p, the fourth gives MU of 50p, and the fifth gives MU of only 25p.
So comparing MU in money terms to the price, 50p.
Right. For the first 3 cookies, your MU, £1.50, £1.75p, is greater than the price, 50p. These are called intramarginal units. You're getting more value than you're paying. A rational consumer definitely buys these.
Makes sense. Good deal.
The fourth cookie gives MU of 50p, which exactly equals the price of 50p. This is the marginal unit. You're just about willing to buy this one. Benefit equals cost.
Yeah.
This is the point of consumer equilibrium for this good at this price.
So the equilibrium point, MU, equals price.
But the fifth cookie only gives you MU worth 25p, while the price is still 50p. Here, MU is less than the price. These are extra marginal units. A rational consumer will not buy this cookie. Why pay 50p for something that only gives you 25p worth of satisfaction?
Right. Not worth it.
So this comparison MU versus price determines how many units you'll buy. And crucially, if the price dropped to, say, 25p, then suddenly that fifth cookie would be worth buying. MU 25p, price 25p. That's the law of demand in action, directly derived from diminishing marginal utility.
That relationship, MU equals price or MUX or good X, is really the core finding here for demand.
It is for this Marshallian approach. And just to reiterate, while this cardinal utility, MU measured in numbers or money, is a powerful teaching tool, modern economics often uses that ordinal approach with indifference curves developed by Hicks and Allen. It reaches similar conclusions about consumer equilibrium and demand, but avoids the need to put exact numbers on utility, focusing instead on ranking preferences.
Different tools to understand the same fundamental choices. Okay, wow. So we've covered a lot of ground. We started with just the basic idea of a want as a feeling of lack, then unpacked utility as the power to satisfy that want, looking at its features being relative, subjective, ethically neutral, different from usefulness or pleasure.
Right, and hypothetical measurement, multi-purpose, depending on intensity.
And the different ways utility is created: form, place, service, knowledge, possession, time.
Then we got into total versus marginal utility, that crucial distinction.
Leading us to the big law of diminishing marginal utility, understanding how it works, its assumptions.
And why things like hobbies or addictions aren't really exceptions, plus the valid criticisms about assumptions and measurement.
But despite the criticisms, its significance remains huge for consumers diversifying choices, for government policy explaining the paradox of values,
And most critically, providing the foundation for the law of demand by linking diminishing marginal utility directly to price and consumer equilibrium.
So hopefully, for everyone listening, this gives you a much clearer lens on why you choose what you choose, and maybe why that second helping isn't always as good as the first.
Yeah, it's not just abstract theory. It explains a lot about our daily decisions and how markets work. Understanding it can genuinely help you make more satisfying choices with your own resources.
Absolutely. So let's leave you with a final thought to chew on. We've established that utility is subjective, it changes, it depends on intensity. Given all that, how much do you think modern marketing and advertising actively work to, well, manipulate our perception of utility?
Oh, good question.
Do they try to create wants we didn't have? Or maybe make us feel dissatisfied with what we do have, pushing us away from that natural point of satiety just to sell more stuff?
How much of our perceived utility is genuine and how much is manufactured? Definitely something to think about next time you feel that strong urge to buy something new.